In a world filled with uncertainty, challenges, and constant change, the ability to remain calm is one of the most powerful skills a human being can develop. Many people react to stress impulsively, allowing anger, fear, or anxiety to dictate their decisions. Yet, history and philosophy teach us that those who can control their emotions, regardless of the external chaos, often achieve greater success, peace, and clarity. The Stoic philosophers of ancient Greece and Rome mastered this art of calmness by training their minds to accept reality without resistance, to focus on what lies within their control, and to detach themselves from the turmoil of external events. They believed that life would inevitably bring difficulties: loss, betrayal, failure, injustice, and even death. But these external events were not what truly harmed a person. Instead, it was the judgment we attached to those events that determined whether we suffered or remained at peace. When Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher, king of Rome, faced wars, political betrayal, and personal tragedy, he reminded himself daily that these events were part of the natural flow of the universe and could not disturb his inner calm unless he allowed them to. To train your mind in the same way, you must first recognize that calmness is not something that comes naturally in every moment. It is a discipline, a practice that must be cultivated like a muscle. Every time you resist the impulse to react in anger, every time you pause before speaking harsh words, and every time you reframe a setback as an opportunity for growth, you are strengthening your inner calm. Over time, this practice transforms you into someone who can walk through storms with serenity, who can endure insults without losing dignity, and who can face uncertainty without fear. Stoicism offers the roadmap for this transformation, showing us that by mastering our inner dialogue, controlling our perceptions, and aligning our actions with reason, we can create a mind that remains unshaken, no matter what life throws our way. The foundation of Stoic calmness lies in a simple yet profound distinction: the difference between what is within our control and what is beyond it. According to Epictetus, a Stoic teacher who once lived as a slave, true freedom and tranquility are found only when we stop wasting energy on things we cannot influence. Most people spend their lives stressing about the opinions of others, the unpredictability of the future, or the injustice of fate. Yet none of these are fully within our control. What we can control, however, are our thoughts, our choices, and our responses. Imagine a storm raging outside. The winds are fierce, the rain is heavy, and the trees are bending. You cannot command the storm to stop, but you can close the windows, light a candle, and remain calm inside your home. Life's difficulties are exactly like this storm, beyond your command, yet not beyond your capacity to endure with serenity. Stoicism trains us to always bring our attention back to what is controllable. When insulted, we cannot control the words spoken, but we can control whether we choose to be offended or remain indifferent. When faced with failure, we cannot always control the outcome, but we can control the effort we put in and the lessons we draw from it. This mindset is not about passivity or giving up on changing the world. Rather, it is about approaching life with rational clarity. By staying calm in situations where others would panic, you gain a tremendous advantage. Your mind becomes sharper, your decisions more rational, and your relationships more harmonious. Think of great leaders, athletes, or thinkers. Their success often stems not from avoiding challenges, but from facing them with a calm and disciplined mind. When you adopt the Stoic practice of focusing only on what you can control, you free yourself from the chains of worry, frustration, and unnecessary emotional turbulence. Calmness becomes not a temporary mood, but a stable and enduring state of being. Calmness of the mind is not about suppressing emotions or pretending they don't exist. Rather, it is about creating enough space between stimulus and response, so that emotions do not dominate our reason. The Stoics taught that emotions are natural human experiences, but what matters is how we interpret and react to them. Anger, for example, is often triggered by the perception that we have been wronged or disrespected. Fear arises when we imagine future pain or loss. Anxiety comes from attaching too much importance to events beyond our control. None of these emotions are inherently destructive until we give them authority over our decisions. By training our minds to pause and reflect before reacting, we weaken the power of destructive emotions and allow reason to guide us. Consider Marcus Aurelius, who was surrounded by betrayal in his court. Instead of exploding in rage or paranoia, he reminded himself in his meditations that every man acts according to his understanding of the good. He reframed their actions as the result of ignorance rather than personal malice. This perspective allowed him to remain calm, govern wisely, and maintain inner peace, even in treacherous circumstances. We too can adopt this practice by reframing situations when insulted. We can see it as a reflection of the other person's character, rather than our worth. When facing setbacks, we can view them as opportunities to strengthen resilience. Over time, calmness becomes less about effort and more about habit. The more we practice separating our judgment from external events, the more naturally serenity arises within us. This is not weakness, but strength of the highest order. The ability to remain unmoved while others are shaken, the ability to act with clarity while others act from chaos. The world may never stop presenting challenges, but with Stoic discipline, our minds can learn to remain tranquil like a steady flame that does not flicker, no matter how strong the winds blow around it. To truly train your mind for calmness, you must also embrace the Stoic practice of negative visualization. This may sound paradoxical at first. Why would imagining worst-case scenarios bring peace? Yet, this exercise lies at the heart of Stoic strength. The Stoics recognize that much of our anxiety comes from fearing the unknown and being unprepared for hardship. By deliberately contemplating possible difficulties, such as loss of wealth, betrayal by friends, illness, or even death, we rob them of their power to shock us. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, advised his students to occasionally live as if they were poor, wearing simple clothes and eating the plainest food, so that when life forced such circumstances upon them, they would not be overwhelmed. This practice does not create pessimism. Rather, it cultivates gratitude and resilience. When you visualize losing what you have, you appreciate it more deeply in the present. When you accept that hardships may come, you prepare your mind to meet them calmly instead of with panic. Imagine, for example, an athlete who trains under heavy resistance so that the actual competition feels easier. In the same way, negative visualization strengthens our mental endurance. When the real difficulties arise, they no longer appear unbearable because the mind has already rehearsed them. Modern psychology echoes this Stoic practice in concepts like exposure therapy and stress inoculation, methods that prepare the mind to face challenges with less fear. By practicing negative visualization regularly, you transform the unknown future into familiar territory. Fear weakens because you have already made peace with potential loss. Calmness grows because you no longer cling desperately to comfort or certainty. In this way, Stoicism empowers you not to fear the storms of life, but to walk into them prepared, unshaken, and ready to stand firm like a deeply rooted tree. Another crucial element of Stoic calmness is the mastery of perspective. Human beings often exaggerate the weight of their troubles, magnifying them until they appear unbearable. A minor inconvenience becomes a crisis. A temporary setback feels like a permanent failure. Stoicism teaches us to zoom out and see events within the larger context of life and time. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself of the vastness of the universe and the brevity of human existence. When viewed against the backdrop of eternity, the insults, disappointments, or frustrations of daily life lose much of their sting. Imagine standing close to a painting, so close that all you see are a few dark strokes of paint. They appear chaotic, messy, even ugly. But when you step back, you realize they are part of a greater masterpiece, adding depth and contrast to the whole. Similarly, our hardships may seem unbearable when viewed in isolation, but when we widen our perspective, They often reveal themselves as small parts of a larger journey. This shift of perspective instantly breeds calmness. Instead of saying, "Why is this happening to me?" the Stoic asks, "How does this fit into the larger order of life?" By doing so, pain becomes temporary, loss becomes instructive, and setbacks become stepping stones. A wise Stoic learns to see life not as a series of random misfortunes, but as a training ground for virtue. Each challenge becomes an invitation to practice patience, courage, or self-control. The more we embrace this perspective, the less we are shaken by external events. Calmness emerges naturally because our troubles no longer appear as overwhelming monsters, but as manageable trials within the grand design of existence. When you adopt this mindset, even the storms of life become opportunities to strengthen your roots. Just as trees grow stronger when they face harsh winds. By mastering perspective, you master calmness, and by mastering calmness, you master life itself. One of the greatest enemies of calmness is attachment, the desperate clinging to things, people, or circumstances that are ultimately beyond our control. The Stoics did not teach that we should abandon love, joy, or ambition. Rather, they taught that we must learn to hold all things lightly, knowing that nothing external is truly permanent. Epictetus often reminded his students to treat everything in life as something temporarily entrusted to them. If you love your child, your spouse, or your wealth, cherish them deeply, but remember they are not yours in the ultimate sense. They belong to the natural order and may be taken back at any moment. At first, this sounds harsh, but in reality, it is liberating. Much of our anxiety arises from the fear of losing what we cling to. When we release this desperate grip and accept impermanence, calmness takes its place. Imagine holding water tightly in your fist. It slips through your fingers, but when you relax your hand, the water rests peacefully in your palm. Life is much the same. When you cling, you suffer. When you accept, you find peace. This attitude does not make you cold or detached from life. On the contrary, it allows you to appreciate the present more fully. When you know that every moment is fleeting, you savor it with greater intensity. You love people more deeply because you no longer take them for granted. You enjoy your blessings without fear of losing them. In doing so, you achieve a calmness that is both resilient and joyful. For the Stoic, calmness is not about living without passion. It is about living without chains. By letting go of attachment, you free your heart from the slavery of fear and allow yourself to walk calmly through the constant changes of life, unshaken by loss and unafraid of change. Calmness also requires us to master the discipline of self-talk. The Stoics emphasized that it is not events themselves that disturb us, but the stories we tell ourselves about those events. Marcus Aurelius would often remind himself in his journal that an insult is only harmful if he decides to interpret it as harmful. That misfortune is only crushing if he convinces himself it is unbearable. In this way, the Stoics were centuries ahead of modern psychology, which now affirms that our inner dialogue shapes our emotions and behaviors. Imagine two people facing the same setback, losing a job. One person tells himself, "This is the end, I am worthless, I will never recover." The other says, "This is an opportunity to redirect my path, to grow stronger, to find something better." The event is the same, but the calmness or despair they feel depends entirely on their interpretation. Training your mind for calmness, then, is largely about disciplining your inner voice. Instead of allowing it to spiral into panic, fear, or anger, you must train it to respond with reason and resilience. The Stoics achieve this through daily reflection, meditation on virtues, and conscious reframing of situations. For example, instead of saying, "This is unfair," they would say, "This is an opportunity to practice justice." Instead of saying, "This is unbearable," they would remind themselves, "Others have borne worse with dignity, and so can I." Over time, these mental habits shape a person into someone who is not only calmer, but also more courageous and compassionate. The battlefield of calmness is largely within your own thoughts. If you can command your inner dialogue, You can command your peace, regardless of what happens outside. Calmness, then, is not silence of the mind, but harmony of the mind. A disciplined alignment of thoughts with truth and virtue. Another key Stoic practice for cultivating calmness is the art of daily reflection. Marcus Aurelius kept his meditations not as a book for the world, but as a private journal where he reminded himself of Stoic principles each day. Seneca wrote letters to his friend Lucilius, reflecting on life, virtue, and the challenges of the human condition. These reflections were not merely philosophical exercises, they were tools for strengthening inner calm. By writing down their thoughts, they examined their own weaknesses, prepared for future challenges, and reminded themselves of the bigger picture. Daily reflection serves as a mental anchor, grounding us when life tries to sweep us away with noise and distraction. When you end your day by reviewing your actions, you become more aware of where you lost your calmness and how you can improve tomorrow. When you begin your day by reminding yourself that difficulties will arise, you are less likely to be shocked or angered when they do. This practice is a form of mental training. Just as an athlete trains his body through daily exercise, a Stoic trains his mind through daily reflection. The benefits extend beyond calmness. They cultivate humility, resilience, and gratitude. For example, reflecting on the shortness of life reminds you not to waste energy on trivial quarrels. Reflecting on your mistakes teaches you to respond better in the future, instead of being consumed by guilt. Reflection transforms philosophy from theory into practice, embedding Stoic principles deep within your character. In the modern world, where distractions are constant and emotions are easily stirred, daily reflection becomes more necessary than ever. Whether through journaling, meditation, or quiet contemplation, the Stoic habit of daily reflection ensures that calmness is not an occasional mood, but a cultivated state of mind. One that grows stronger with each passing day. Calmness is also deeply connected to the practice of acceptance. One of the most liberating truths the Stoics taught is that much of our suffering comes not from events themselves, but from our resistance to them. Life is constantly unfolding, often in ways that do not match our desires. We lose jobs, relationships end, health declines, people betray us, plans fail. The common response is to protest internally. This should not be happening to me. But Stoicism teaches us that reality is indifferent to our preferences. The universe operates according to its own laws, not according to our wishes. To resist what has already happened is to wage a battle that can never be won, a battle that only drains our energy and destroys our peace. Acceptance does not mean passivity or resignation. It means acknowledging that reality is as it is, and choosing to respond wisely rather than emotionally. Marcus Aurelius compared life's challenges to the obstacles a wrestler faces. The wrestler does not complain about resistance. He embraces it as part of the contest. Similarly, we must learn to accept obstacles as part of the human experience. This shift in attitude breeds calmness because it ends the exhausting struggle against the unchangeable. When you accept reality, you can redirect your energy toward what you can influence. Your choices, your actions, your character. Consider a sailor at sea. He cannot control the wind or the waves, but he can adjust his sails. Acceptance is the adjustment of the sails of the mind. It transforms despair into resilience, frustration into focus, and chaos into calm. By training yourself to accept life as it comes, you free yourself from unnecessary suffering and discover an inner peace that external events cannot disturb. Calmness also grows when we commit ourselves to living according to virtue. The Stoics believed that the only true good in life is virtue, wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline. Everything else, wealth, status, health, reputation, is secondary, and therefore not worth losing our peace over. When you align your actions with virtue, your conscience remains clear, and your mind rests in calmness regardless of outcomes. For example, if you lose wealth but acted with justice and integrity, you have lost nothing of true value. If others slander you, but you have lived honestly, Their words cannot touch your inner worth. This perspective removes much of the emotional turbulence that disturbs people who chase external rewards. A man who lives for wealth panics when markets fall. A woman who lives for praise collapses when criticized. But the Stoic who lives for virtue remains calm in both fortune and misfortune. Virtue becomes an unshakable foundation, providing stability when external circumstances shift. Moreover, virtue simplifies decision-making. When faced with dilemmas, you ask not, "What will bring me the most pleasure or advantage?" but, "What is the right thing to do?" This clarity prevents the inner conflict and guilt that often disturb peace of mind. Calmness flows naturally when your values are aligned with your actions. Seneca wrote that a good conscience is the softest pillow. No luxury can replace the calmness that comes from living with integrity. In modern life, where pressures to compromise values are constant, the Stoic commitment to virtue remains a powerful anchor. It reminds us that true calmness is not escapism but strength. The strength of knowing that no matter what happens outside, your soul remains untainted, your dignity intact, and your inner world serene. A powerful Stoic technique for cultivating calmness is the practice of amor fati, the love of fate. While acceptance teaches us to endure what happens, amor fati takes it a step further. It teaches us to embrace and even love whatever life brings. Instead of merely tolerating obstacles, the Stoic learns to see them as essential elements of his journey. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that everything that happens is natural, and what is natural cannot be harmful to the whole. If the universe has allowed an event, then it must serve a greater purpose, even if we cannot yet perceive it. By adopting this mindset, we transform difficulties into allies rather than enemies. Imagine being delayed in traffic. A common reaction is irritation, frustration, or anger. But with amor fati, the Stoic reframes the delay as a chance to practice patience, to reflect, or to enjoy an unexpected moment of stillness. Suddenly, what could have been a source of stress becomes an opportunity for growth. This shift not only preserves calmness but deepens it. Instead of viewing life as something that obstructs our plans, we begin to see it as a teacher guiding us toward wisdom. Amor fati is not narvi optimism. It does not deny pain, injustice, or tragedy. Rather, it equips us to find meaning in them, to transform suffering into strength. History shows countless examples of individuals who endured immense trials and yet turned them into sources of greatness. By choosing to love fate, the Stoic rises above complaint and resentment. Life ceases to be an adversary and becomes a companion. This profound alignment with reality creates an unshakable calm, because nothing is wasted, nothing is meaningless. Every event, whether joyful or painful, becomes part of the path. When you learn to love your fate, calmness is no longer fragile. Dependent on circumstances, it becomes absolute, rooted in the very acceptance and embrace of existence itself. Another Stoic principle that strengthens calmness is the awareness of impermanence. Everything in life, success, failure, pleasure, pain, relationships, possessions, is temporary. The Stoics constantly reminded themselves of this truth, not to create despair, but to cultivate freedom. Marcus Aurelius wrote often about the fleeting nature of human life, observing how generations before us have vanished, and how soon we too will pass. This meditation strips away the illusion of permanence that causes much of our anxiety. When we believe that something will last forever, our youth, our wealth, our relationships, we cling to it desperately. When change inevitably comes, we are shaken, devastated, or enraged. But when we remember impermanence, we learn to hold things lightly, enjoying them while they last but not collapsing when they are gone. Imagine watching a beautiful sunset. You know it will not last, but instead of grieving its passing, you savor its beauty more deeply because of its brevity. Life itself is like that sunset. Everything we cherish is made more precious by the fact that it is temporary. This awareness cultivates calmness because it dissolves the illusion of control. You no longer rage against change, for you know it is the very nature of existence. You no longer waste energy resisting the inevitable, you adapt with grace. The Stoics did not dwell morbidly on death and loss, but they used the thought of impermanence to sharpen their appreciation of the present. Seneca advised, "Let us cherish those we love as if we may soon lose them." This mindset transforms daily life. Instead of taking moments for granted, you approach them with gratitude. Instead of clinging, you release with serenity. Calmness becomes your companion because you are no longer surprised when the wheel of fortune turns. You expect change, you accept it, and therefore you remain unshaken by it. In embracing impermanence, you align yourself with the rhythm of life itself, a rhythm that is ever changing, ever flowing, and yet profoundly beautiful. Calmness also arises from simplicity. The Stoics warned against overindulgence in desires, possessions, and unnecessary distractions, because these things often create inner turbulence rather than peace. Seneca wrote that the man who needs little is the richest of all, for he is not enslaved by endless cravings. Modern life encourages constant stimulation. Social media notifications, advertisements, consumer temptations, and each of these pulls the mind into restlessness. A Stoic seeks the opposite, a life of simplicity, guided by reason and virtue, rather than by endless appetite. Simplicity does not mean living without comfort or ambition. It means stripping away what is unnecessary so that you can focus on what truly matters. Imagine walking into a room cluttered with objects. It feels overwhelming and chaotic. Now picture a room with only what is essential, arranged neatly. It feels calm and spacious. The mind works the same way. When burdened by endless desires and distractions, it becomes noisy, restless, and anxious. But when simplified, it becomes calm, focused, and clear. A Stoic simplifies his desires by reminding himself that happiness does not depend on wealth, luxury, or fame. True happiness lies in self-mastery, wisdom, and virtue. This mindset removes the anxiety of constantly chasing more and fearing loss. If you are content with little, you are calm even when fortune turns against you. Simplicity also extends to daily habits. Eating moderately, speaking thoughtfully, using time wisely. Each small act of restraint builds inner strength and peace. In this way, calmness is not merely an emotional state but a lifestyle, cultivated through simplicity. By removing excess, you uncover serenity. By quieting unnecessary noise, you hear the deeper voice of reason. The Stoic pursuit of simplicity is, therefore, not deprivation but liberation. The liberation of the mind from the chaos of desire, the chains of consumerism, and the storms of unnecessary complication. Calmness is further strengthened by the practice of gratitude. The Stoics believe that no matter how difficult life becomes, there is always something to be grateful for. Gratitude shifts the focus of the mind from what is lacking to what is present, from what is lost to what remains. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself to wake up each day with thanks for the gift of life itself, for the chance to breathe, to think, to act with virtue. Seneca wrote that a wise person is never ungrateful, for he sees blessings even in hardship. Gratitude is not blind optimism, it is a disciplined way of seeing the world. When something painful happens, gratitude reminds you that it could have been worse, or that it has given you a chance to grow. When you face loss, gratitude teaches you to be thankful for the time you had rather than resentful for what is gone. This perspective preserves calmness because it prevents the mind from being consumed by bitterness and complaint. Imagine two people enduring the same hardship. One focuses only on what he has lost and is crushed by despair, while the other remembers what remains and finds strength to continue. The difference is gratitude. Modern science confirms what the Stoics already knew. Practicing gratitude reduces stress, improves emotional resilience, and increases inner peace. A Stoic cultivates this habit daily, reflecting on small blessings, the warmth of sunlight, the loyalty of a friend, the opportunity to act with integrity. Even misfortunes can be reframed with gratitude, for they provide the chance to practice patience, courage, or forgiveness. In this way, gratitude transforms life into a classroom of blessings, both obvious and hidden. The grateful mind is calm because it is not enslaved by the constant hunger for more. It is content, peaceful, and resilient. Gratitude does not erase pain, but it softens it. It does not prevent loss, but it teaches us to treasure what we have while it lasts. For the Stoic, gratitude is the foundation of serenity, a shield against despair, and a constant reminder that life, in all its forms, is a gift. Calmness also depends on mastering the art of patience. In a world obsessed with speed, efficiency, and instant gratification, the ability to wait calmly has become a rare strength. Yet the Stoics understood that life unfolds in its own time, not according to our demands. Seneca wrote that time heals even the deepest wounds, if only we allow it to pass without constant agitation. Impatience, on the other hand, is a form of inner violence. It demands that the universe obey our schedule, and when it does not, we suffer. Think of a seed planted in the soil. No matter how much we want it to grow, we cannot force it to sprout before its season. If we grow impatient and dig it up every day, we destroy it. Calmness requires the same patience, an understanding that growth, healing, and success take time. This mindset protects us from anxiety, because instead of demanding immediate results, we trust the natural pace of life. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself to wait for the unfolding of events, for often what seems delayed is merely preparing us for something greater. Patience is not weakness or passivity. It is strength under control. It allows us to endure hardship without panic, to wait for opportunities without desperation, and to face uncertainty without fear. When you are patient, you do not collapse at the first sign of difficulty, because you understand that storms pass and seasons change. You do not rush decisions in a frenzy of anxiety, but act with clarity when the time is right. Calmness is born in this space between impulse and action, between desire and fulfillment. By cultivating patience, you align yourself with the rhythm of life, and you find peace not in forcing outcomes, but in trusting the process. Another powerful Stoic teaching for cultivating calmness is the understanding of universal brotherhood, the idea that all human beings are part of one great community. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on the interconnectedness of humanity, reminding himself that every person he met was a fellow citizen of the world. This perspective reduces anger and hostility, because instead of viewing others as enemies, we see them as misguided brothers or sisters. When someone insults you, the instinctive reaction is to retaliate. But a Stoic remembers that the person is acting according to their understanding, shaped by their own ignorance or suffering. Just as we do not blame a blind man for not seeing, we should not take it personally when others act unjustly out of ignorance. This attitude preserves calmness by transforming anger into compassion. Instead of wasting energy on resentment, you maintain inner peace by recognizing the shared humanity in others. The Stoics also emphasized that we exist not for ourselves alone, but for the service of the community. Marcus Aurelius compared people to hands, feet, and eyes, different parts of the same body working together. When you live with this awareness, you are less disturbed by selfishness, cruelty, or rudeness, because you understand that disharmony arises when individuals forget their role in the larger whole. By remembering our shared nature, you keep your mind calm even in the face of conflict. This universal perspective also prevents isolation, which often magnifies suffering. Knowing that you are part of something greater than yourself brings strength, humility, and serenity. Calmness grows when you release the illusion of separateness and embrace compassion. In this way, Stoicism turns human interaction from a battlefield into a field of understanding. The more you practice universal brotherhood, the less you are shaken by others' actions, and the more you maintain the inner calm that comes from harmony with the human family. Calmness is also sustained through discipline over speech and action. The Stoics warned against letting words flow recklessly, for uncontrolled speech often inflames conflict and destroys peace. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself to speak only what is necessary and speak it with calmness. Words can either heal or harm, soothe or stir anger. When we speak without reflection, we often regret later, and that regret disturbs our calm. The Stoic learns to pause before speaking, to ask, is this true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? By applying this filter, speech becomes a tool for harmony rather than chaos. Similarly, the Stoics emphasized moderation in action. Acting in haste without considering consequences leads to mistakes, guilt, and turmoil. But acting with deliberate calmness aligns us with reason and virtue. Imagine a general on the battlefield. If he acts out of panic, his army collapses. But if he acts with measured calm, he leads with wisdom and courage. Each of us faces our own battles daily, in our careers, relationships, and personal struggles. Calmness in speech and action transforms these battles from storms into navigable challenges. Discipline does not mean suppressing yourself. It means channeling your energy wisely. When you control your tongue, you prevent unnecessary quarrels. When you discipline your actions, you prevent mistakes that disturb your peace. Over time, this disciplined way of living becomes second nature. You begin to notice that your days contain fewer regrets, fewer conflicts, fewer disturbances. What takes their place is a steady serenity, a sense that you are living in harmony with yourself and others. In this way, discipline is not a burden but a safeguard of calmness, ensuring that your inner tranquility remains intact even when the world around you is turbulent. Calmness also requires the courage to face uncertainty. Much of human anxiety comes from the desperate need to control the future. We fear the unknown, we obsess over what might happen, and in doing so, we rob ourselves of peace in the present. The Stoics taught that the future is never fully ours. It belongs to fate, chance, and the unfolding of nature. What is ours is the present moment, the here and now. Epictetus urged his students to focus their energy only on what lay before them. Do not demand that events happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do happen, and you will go on well. This wisdom releases us from the chains of worry. Uncertainty is not an enemy, but a constant companion of life. The Stoic faces it with courage rather than fear. Consider a sailor who sets out on the ocean. He cannot control the wind or predict the storms, but he can control how he steers his ship. Similarly, we cannot control every outcome of life, but we can control how we live each moment. Courage in the face of uncertainty is the foundation of calmness. Instead of wasting energy on what ifs, the Stoic asks, what can I do right now with what I have? This mindset not only preserves peace, but also sharpens effectiveness. Worry scatters the mind, but calmness focuses it. When you stop fearing the unknown, you open yourself to possibility, creativity, and resilience. Calmness, therefore, is not the absence of uncertainty, but the ability to stand steady in its presence. By training yourself to trust the flow of life, to focus on the present, and to act with courage, you become like a rock unmoved by the waves of doubt. The future remains uncertain, but your mind remains unshaken. Calmness, as the Stoics understood it, also depends on cultivating inner independence. Most people live as if their peace of mind depends entirely on external validation. Praise, success, or approval. When these are given, they feel happy. When they are taken away, they collapse. But the Stoics taught that true calmness arises only when you root your worth within yourself, not in the opinions of others. Epictetus reminded his students that if you wish to be free, do not let your happiness rest on things outside your control. This includes the judgments of people, which are often fickle and misguided. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself not to be swayed by the applause or criticism of the crowd, for their opinions change with the wind. Instead, he grounded himself in virtue and reason, knowing that living rightly was its own reward. Inner independence is a shield against the chaos of external approval. Imagine a musician who plays only to please the audience. She will be restless, for their reactions are beyond her control. But if she plays from the heart, grounded in her love for the art, she will remain calm whether praised or criticized. Similarly, when you act from integrity, your calmness is unshaken by others' reactions. This independence also protects against envy and comparison, poisons that disturb peace. When you no longer measure yourself by the standards of others, you are free to live calmly, according to your own values. Calmness flourishes in this freedom. It is the calmness of knowing that your worth does not rise or fall with fortune, reputation, or approval. It is the calmness of a soul that rests securely in itself, untouchable by the shifting opinions of the world. In the end, the Stoic path to calmness is a lifelong discipline, not a quick technique. It requires daily practice, reflection, and resilience. Calmness is not a gift granted by fate, but a skill built through consistent training of the mind. It begins with recognizing what is within our control and what is not, continues with practices like negative visualization, gratitude, patience, and acceptance, and matures into an unshakable peace rooted in virtue and independence. The ultimate goal of Stoic calmness is not to escape life's difficulties, but to face them with courage and wisdom. The Stoic does not hide from pain, insult, or uncertainty. He meets them with a steady heart and a disciplined mind. This calmness is not cold detachment but profound strength. It enables you to love more deeply because you do not cling, to act more courageously because you do not fear, and to live more joyfully because you appreciate each moment as a gift. Imagine walking through life as if through a storm, yet remaining steady, composed, and serene, like a mountain unmoved by wind and rain. This is the calmness Stoicism offers, the calmness that cannot be shaken by external events, because it is built on the unshakable foundation of inner mastery. In a noisy and chaotic world, this calmness is rare, but it is possible. Every insult you endure with patience, every loss you accept with dignity, every desire you restrain with wisdom, strengthens the fortress of your mind. Over time, that fortress becomes unbreakable. You no longer live as a slave to emotions or circumstances. You live as a free human being, guided by reason, virtue, and peace. This is the Stoic ideal, a life of calmness in every situation, a life of true strength, and a life of enduring serenity.